Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Songs of Our Lives. I am Brad Rose. I am an artist, a composer, a writer, and the founder of Foxy, Digitalis, somebody who thinks about music and sound far more than it's healthy. Each week, I invite on a guest to talk about the music and the songs that have meant a lot to them and been with them along their journey. Previous guests include Miriam Gendron, Six Organs of Admittance, Ilyas Ahmed, Rosalie, Andrew Peckler, Robert Aki, Aubrey Lowe, Cabaird, Sarah Hennies, the list goes on and on. This week, I am thrilled to invite on Yann Novak. Yann is a multidisciplinary artist, a composer, a designer, does a lot of things. He's based out of LA, and he just keeps releasing music that I love. His album from last year, The Voice of Theseus. I never know how to say this. I think I did a review of this back on the old Foxy Digitalis Daily. Couldn't remember how to say it. Now I'm gonna have to say it twice. It was on Room 40. It is fantastic. And then coming up later this month on July 26th, he has the Voices of Theseus, and it's some remixes from people like Fax and Lawrence English, and then he did some kind of reworked some of the songs with G. Brenner, who provided vocals on the original album along with Dorian Wood, the great Dorian Wood. And yeah, it's just as wonderful. It's like a different kind of wonderful, but I absolutely adore it. And I'm just a huge fan of all that Yann does. He also is the head of Dragon's Eye Recordings, which is a great label if you like drone and ambient music. There's just so much. And yeah, so we recorded this a while ago. This is a bit of an old one, and just scheduling is weird, but it was an absolute blast. It was so much fun to just talk to Yann, and he turned me on to some great stuff. So anyway, hope y'all enjoy it. My guest today is a composer, musician, and the founder and housefather, I love that title, of Dragon's Eye Recordings. It's Yann Novak. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Where did the housefather thing come from anyway? I've just always wondered.
It's a reference to a number of things. Both there's kind of this like Britishy boarding school origin of it, but then it was kind of taken over by the ballroom scene. So in the ballroom scene it's generally majority house mothers, and there are a few house fathers, but there's a huge communal aspect to ballroom culture. So most houses kind of start out with them actually living together, and a lot of like house mothers are helping people kind of get their shit together, get their lives together, and that kind of feels a lot of the time feels like my biggest role in Dragon's Eye is to kind of help share my experience with artists that are just starting out, and tell them things I wish there had been someone around to tell me 20 years ago.
Yeah. I really love that. I think that's like a really wonderful way to look at running a label. Like, I mean, obviously there's a lot of other things, but I think I really like that. And that's actually one of the things that I like about Dragons. I mean, I like the music, but I like that so often you're putting out stuff by a lot of people like I've not heard of, or like, a lot of time maybe it's their first thing, or is that something that continues to sort of like be a driving factor for you and is like important to you with the label?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, I feel like I mean, we're closing in on 20 years of the label now. Um, it was a lot sparser a playing field when I started it in 2005. Um, and to me now it feels like, once an artist puts out a label, or puts out an album on a label, there are so many opportunities for them to do it somewhere else with someone else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it still feels like a really hard proposition for folks that have never done it before. Um,
Yeah.
and then also kind of trying to focus on specifically on marginalized communities. A lot of those folks don't have, might not have the confidence to approach bigger labels. And so I'm trying to kind of carve out this welcoming space for them to send things, and it's so far it always works out really well. So
Yeah.
yeah, no
That's
reason to
like,
change it.
I love that. I mean, that was like we were talking about a little bit before we started recording. Like the label I run now it's a vanity project. It's just me putting out my own stuff. But back when I was running Digitalis, that was always one of the most exciting things for me, was working with artists on like their first thing, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and because it is, and I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like now. Like I stopped doing Digitalis in 2015, and I feel like the landscape is unrecognizable now compared to that even then.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's crazy, like, and Dragon's Eye, really started as a semi-vanity project for me too. Like the first couple years, it was like I had 3 or 4 other artists on the label, but it was also like I was releasing all my own work on there. Um, and it was so much easier. The first thing that I put out, it was like a CDR of a hundred copies, and it was like charted in a local record store. It was like on a best
Mm-hmm.
of in the local paper. The local paper wrote about it. The Wire wrote about it. Like it was like,
Yeah.
and it was like I had no aspiration for any of that to happen. I just kind of blindly sent out CDRs to see what would
Right.
happen.
Yeah.
So it was like this was
I remember.
very, very unplanned.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember that. Yeah, I had a similar experience, and it seems like a completely different universe now. Like that. I'm sure maybe it happens sometimes. I don't know, but it just. But I don't want to, the good old days. It's just
Yeah,
it's different.
totally. Yeah,
um,
it's just different.
well, this is a sort of good segue here to we're strolling down memory lane. But let's get into this and go all the way back, like way back, and let's start with, as always, talking about the first song that you remember.
Okay. So for that one, I picked "For Ellis" by Beethoven. That's my first memory because my mother was a piano player. She was a piano player
Mm-hmm.
and guitar player, but we had an upright piano in our home, and she would. That was kind of one of the things she did to relax, and so she would. She played a lot of Beethoven, and that just happened. That part of that piece, um, the very recognizable moment in that piece specifically, um, it's a total earworm, and so that
Right.
her that's I recognize the whole piece, but like that chunk of it is what
Mm-hmm.
stuck out to me as a child.
Oh, and it's one of those things that, yeah, you can hear like the first second of it, and it's like instantly
Yeah,
recognizable, like those first two notes or something. And
yeah, exactly.
I think I would be curious because my daughter's 10, and I remember it was a couple years ago, and she came home from music class and like in school and talked about that. Like they heard this. I'm guessing if I asked her in like 10 years, it would probably be one of her first memories because it's like I said, it's such an earworm, and it's everybody knows it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's great.
Yeah,
it's so
yeah. I mean, it's the emotional weight of it is amazing. For it to be so simple and yet have such weight. Yeah.
It's something. I feel like that's a combination I'm often striving for. I know music, and we'll never reach those heights, of course. But
yeah.
Well, speaking of things with an emotional weight, what is a song that makes you cry?
So this one has a little bit of backstory to it. But I chose Anthony and the Johnsons, "Hope There's Someone." This kind of, I guess it was like mid 2000s when Anthony was still Anthony and the Johnsons and had put out, I think, 2 records at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't, the first time I heard her work, I didn't really connect with it. And it had this very kind of cabaret-ish feel to me. And so it didn't, it really didn't connect. And timing-wise, a friend of mine gave me the single for "Hope There's Someone" right at this horrible time in my life when my boyfriend at the time, now ex, had major surgery and had spent 6 weeks in the hospital. And right when he got out of the hospital, which I had to care for him for like the next 6 months, be his caregiver. 3 days after he got out of the hospital, I got the call that my mother had a brain tumor.
Oh, wow.
And so I was kind of totally shut down. That song absolutely hit in that,
right.
And my mother passed away really quickly. From diagnosis to her passing was 3 months. So it was a really intense time. I didn't really get to go see her much because I was a caregiver for my partner.
Right.
So it was a disaster, and that song both got me through it, but also, has some weight to it, even 15 years later, or 17 years later. So.
Yeah, I remember when I first heard this, I don't remember like any specific thing that was going on, but it just kind of flattened me. Like it's such a powerful
it's a
song.
Killer.
Yeah. And I kind of had I remember like whenever her stuff was first coming out, like cause in like her first record, I think was on like David Tibet's label. And I thought and it was like, I kept reading about it, but I never really, I think like you, I'd heard maybe some pieces and like, it had like that kind of cabaret aspect. It just didn't click for me. But then at the time, like I was like around that time, I would spend a lot of time on AOL Instant Messenger talking like all day to Sarah Hennies. Like her and I've known each other for 20 years. And this comes up in this show all the time because she has probably turned me on to more great music than anybody ever. And this was one of the things she's like, no, you have to hear this. And I was like, okay, if Sarah is telling like, let me give it another chance. And it was this song. And it was just like, like amazing. And kind of, it's like everything clicked. And, but yeah, this song is wow. And having that added weight of like what you were going through and like have this come into your life at that time, I can I can only imagine.
I mean it was definitely like a flotation device and a trigger all in one.
Right. Yeah, I mean just I hope there's someone to take care of me and like oh my god. Okay. Wow. Okay, well let's flip the script and talk and
Yeah.
brighten the mood. What's a song that'll put you in a better mood?
So I chose Billie Eilish's "Therefore I Am."
Okay.
It is, you know, to not get too dark, but oftentimes my bad moods are very much linked to different forms of inequality. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I
Mm-hmm.
have staggering credit card debt. I'm queer. It's fucking crazy and scary to be queer in America right now.
Yeah.
They're trying to legislate us away. And then seeing all these layoffs and, it's just a
Right.
generally terrible time. And there's a glorious fuck you attitude in that track of hers. Just this absolutely flippant, I think it's this vibe that she really excels at, of just like, this kind of empowerment, but also kind of through this kind of, little bit of a punch there as well.
Yeah.
Um,
So I haven't listened to a lot of Billie Eilish. It's not like this, like I'm a snob or anything. I mean, mostly like when my kid is home, my kid owns the stereo and she listens to Taylor Swift. And
okay,
which is fine, whatever. Like, but this, like, I fucking love this. I'd never heard this and I fucking love it. It's so good. And it's not at all what I expected too. Like, cause I didn't really know what to expect, honestly. Like, I know her like real big hits. Which maybe this is, but you know what I mean? Like, but God, like the attitude of it is so good. And then on top of this, the production is weird in ways I didn't expect.
Oh yeah.
And like the bass line is everything. Like, it's just, I love this. And I'm not now determined, like, okay, because eventually my kid is going to want to expand her horizons. And I'm supportive of but I'm like, okay, this is like one of the next steps. It's like, nice. Okay, let's listen to Billie Eilish. I think, because again, good message. The music is like, I think she'll dig it, but I was really stoked by this, and I can see how this would put you in a better mood too. Like, I love, like you said, the attitude of it.
There's a really fun video. It was actually, she put it out it's on her second record. But she put it out as a single between the two records, really during the pandemic, and did this great video of her strolling through the Glendale Galleria. It's like a really kind of corny mall here in LA. And it's just like, the mall is totally empty, and she's, strolling through it, and it's all like shot by a friend on iPhone. Like, there's something really modest, and kind of amazing. I first discovered her through the show Euphoria, which I was a huge fan of. And there's another song of hers that I almost put here, called "You Should See Me in a Crown," and they use that track in the show specifically for, a character that is, kind of, has a huge amount of insecurity and is finally kind of like owning herself.
Oh, nice.
I think weirdly, that shot is also in the Glendale Galleria. Weirdly. Anyway, so that's how I found out about her, and I, hadn't been paying attention, so it's kind of like I missed out on a ton of it. And I think she's a fascinating artist.
Yeah, I'm super intrigued, and I feel like I miss out on a lot of stuff. Like, I mean, this is going to come up later on completely unrelated things, but with stuff like this, I feel like I have the opportunity to sort of go back and, like, with my kid and discover it, and especially if she gets into it, like, again, trying to find things. I don't know. There was we'll get to it, but there was another thing because I made a playlist of all your songs so I could listen to it in the car and stuff. And something came on when she was getting out of the car today, and she was like, oh, this is cool. I was like, okay.
Okay.
So, but we'll get to that. So anyway,
Okay, nice, nice.
Okay, well, this is the easiest question to answer, of course. But Yann Novak, what is objectively the best song of all time?
This one was really hard for me, and I was super insecure about my answer. But I just had to go with it, which is Rabbit in the Moon, Out of Body Experience.
Nice.
So that's a track for those that don't know, that may not know, because it's like it was hugely popular in the 90s in the rave scene specifically, but I have no idea how far out of that sphere it actually got.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a group of artists in San Francisco that went by Hard Kiss, and they put out an album of a lot of their self-produced work and then some of their friends. And this was the opening track of this 2 CD album. And it's unlike anything else Rabbit in the Moon has produced. It's way denser, way more complex. It has a great use of samples of Tori Amos.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that's what it was, but now,
it's Tori Amos's voice, and the piano line is from one of her pieces off of Little Earthquakes. Which is, I also find it a wonderful time capsule, because it's like this was pressed on, million, who knows how many CDs. They did a reissue a couple years ago. And it's something that just couldn't exist today. Like, it absolutely could not exist because of DRM and copyright.
Right. The way they use the vocal sample, like, that's awesome. Like, that's my favorite part, I think. And it actually sort of made me think about your record and like the way you use the voices and stuff. Like, it's different, but in my head there's like this connection there, and maybe I'm wrong.
I'm far too humble to be able to admit that, but I am flattered. Like, going back to the initial like prompt, like why I chose it for this position is that I feel like what's so interesting about it is there's so many desperate parts layered together that you wouldn't necessarily think work, and somehow they're all interacting with each other in this really rhythmic, beautiful way. I also love things that kind of have high peaks and low lows, so it has those dynamics I love. So just on a lot of different levels, it feels like a really interesting song to me. So that's why I went with it.
Yeah, no, again, like, there is no right or wrong answer to this question. This is why I love asking this question, though, is to hear, because this is, I've heard this before. It's probably been, I don't know, when did the reissue come out? Like, it's been a while, even since that was probably the last time I listened to this. But it's, I mean, when I was listening to it again, there's so much going on that doesn't seem like it should work. Like you were saying, it's like, I don't know how it works, but it does. Like, there's just this alchemy.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I love music like that is kind of confounding in that way, where you hear it and it's like, I don't even know where I would start trying to do something like this. Like, so
I think also for something like this, like your objectively best song, it also felt like I was like, it can't be anything from later than high school, because I need to have been listening to it, and it's like it's like 30 years old now, and I still can't put my finger on these things, and I've listened, who knows how many times I've listened to it in the last 30 years, like. That, it's like I could never name something from the last 5 years as the best song. because I haven't had enough time to ruminate on it.
It needs to have like that staying power where you can listen to it 30 years later and it's still like, oh man, this still does it. Because there's stuff I've heard. There's stuff I heard like 5 years ago or something that I was like, oh my god, this is incredible. And I listened to it and I'm like, yeah, it's fine, but it's so that makes a lot of sense. Well, on the other side of not having staying power, what's a song you used to love but now not so much?
So I had to put a whole album in here. So for me, it is the Flaming Lips, A Soft Bulletin.
Oh wow! Okay, tell me why.
When I first heard it, I missed it. I wasn't a Flaming Lips fan, like I just wasn't aware of them at the time. So it was a couple years after it came out that I first heard it, and I thought it was fantastic, like perfect record type of thing. You know what I mean? Like at the moment, it was like, oh, this is the best music I've ever heard. Like it just felt so good. And for me, after taking that time away from, I played it to death, got sick of it, and coming back to it, to me, it is like birthday cake from a grocery store. Like it is just cloyingly sweet, and it is like the catchiness is unbearable to me. And that's a thing that's very particular to me, and I think particularly to indie rock. I think maybe I spent too much time in Seattle and was subjected to too much indie rock. I don't know. But there's something about overly catchy indie rock that just grates on me, and I feel like they were just like, they did it perfectly, and so it is a perfect storm of what I can't stand now.
You can't. No, that's really interesting. It's funny because I had kind of an opposite. I loved this when it came. Flaming Lips, it's Oklahoma. Like we're required by law to check out their stuff, but I played it to death too, and then I kind of came back to it. I don't know. It had been a while. Like it had been a long time, and it was maybe in the last year. I was like, "Oh my god, the Soft Bulletin! I forgot about that." And listened to it, and I actually still really loved it. So
yeah,
but I think that's really interesting. And to be fair, I also have a soft spot for grocery store birthday cake. So maybe that's.
I actually do too. So there's no shade there. But it's like by the end of the second piece, you're like, all it is like my teeth hurt.
Yes. Well, that's yeah, exactly. I like it every once in a while. I'm not gonna. And that's exactly. And I think that's the same thing with it. Like, I re-listened to it. It's like, oh, this is really great. I don't think I've listened to it again since then. So, and that was once ago.
Yeah, so. I can. The Yoshimi record after it, I can drop in every couple years and be like, oh yeah, I like this. Like something about that one. It's like, it's a little flawed somehow. I love flaws. I love friction. So I think that also might be something like, I'm much more interested in seeing where things don't work, or seeing things that shouldn't work that do, versus something that just feels so perfectly done.
Yeah, I saw somebody was saying this on social media today, like, don't give me the best records, give me the weird ones that were maybe a mistake, or give me the one, that were, it's like, yeah, I want to hear the weird stuff that there's problems with, or there's, I don't know, perfect record. Yeah, perfection is boring. Okay, well, what is the song that people hate? Whoever this group of people is, you define it, but you don't care. You love it anyway.
Yeah. So that one, which is, I think is a good, we just segued really well into my answer. So this one is The Weeknd, I Can't Feel My Face.
Oh, people hate this? Or who hates this?
I would say The Weeknd is by that point in his career, um, that record particularly, I think the independent music world had soured
Gotcha.
on
Yeah.
The Weeknd. It's like when I try and listen to it around, other musician friends, it's like no one wants me to play that when I have the aux cable. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
that's fine. I get it. But for me, it's going back to my mother again. When I was in the 80s with my mom, she was a huge Michael Jackson fan. And so that
Mm.
was 80s Michael Jackson was really this, kind of turned into this idea of what perfect pop music was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like The Weeknd and particularly that song really
Yeah.
like capture that legacy.
Mm-hmm.
But he also somehow snuck in this like overt song about doing cocaine. In like more in your face than it's ever been, into a song that was like, I remember when that song was popular, I could not leave the house and not hear it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I would be walking down the street and a car would drive by with the windows open with that song playing. You would hear it at the restaurant or the mall or,
Right.
wherever you happen to be. It like transcended boundaries and was just everywhere. So,
Yeah. I
it's like,
remember that.
I think
Yeah.
it's really fascinating to have a song about your face being numb from cocaine,
Right.
be that popular.
Yeah. I always wonder.
And
It's
then on
like,
his next record, he made fun of that.
right.
There's a
Yeah.
really funny line about getting a a Kids Choice Award for that
For a song
song.
about. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, yep, you did it. Like,
You did. That's
yeah,
yeah. Not a lot of people can say that. Yeah, I really like I really like this song because one of the things I love about it is how it builds up and it builds up and you think it's going to be this big crescendo and then it just like goes down into the gutter and does this. It's like this weird. The chorus is weird and bassy and
mm-hmm.
it's fantastic. I love that and yeah, the whole
Yeah.
I always think about it's like the number of people who were like singing this song had no clue what it was about. Like,
Exactly.
and that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's he did it in such a way that people could not realize it. And
right.
Everyone that did realize it was like, oh my God, this is funny.
I know.
And he just has an amazing voice, and I love an amazing voice. So
same. I love his voice. So, like, and there's something very, I don't know, like specific to his voice that gets me. Like, I would, yeah. I really love his voice too. Well, if it's not a song about doing cocaine, what's the most romantic song?
So this one is a little roundabout, and later on, I will. There's a weird overlap in context with a different question about a song. I think the one I run out of the room for has a relation to this.
Okay.
So in general, I don't connect music to romance or sexy a lot. There's not a direct correlation there, which I will talk about later, why that is. So this track, I chose the modernist Pearly Spencer. And it only makes sense with the story. So when me and my now fiance Robert got together 15 some years ago, when we were first getting together, we were sharing tons of music with each other. And that was like the most exciting thing for me, because being a queer person and also liking weird music, there weren't a lot of overlaps in my dating life there. And so to be dating someone that also had this not only this passion, but also the same taste or similar taste was extremely exciting to me. And one of the big dumps that he gave me, I think before we were even living together, was a ton of the compact total releases. And this was late 2000s, so compact was like the thing in electronic music at the time. And I went back, and this track specifically from that grouping of songs was played, for some reason, was played about 50 times more than anything else on all those other compact totals. And like, that's why I picked it. I was like, for some reason, this was the song that stood out the most from that. And it was like, the kind of romance of, trading music was fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's, yeah. I mean, I've been with my wife for 20 years, 21. I don't know. Yeah. 21. And that was like an early thing in our relationship, was sharing music. Like, there is, when you're, I mean, I'm sure it's not like that for a lot of people, but like for someone like me, or you, like, who's obsessed with music, like I think about music and sound, like I always say in the intro, far more than is probably healthy. But like, to have that experience of sharing this weird stuff and having the other person be like, oh, that's really cool, or like, and be into it, and then be like, well, here's this thing. There's, that is romance to me, for better or worse, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to me that absolutely is. And it's like, because originally I was like, it's not like I'm like, like, I always think, like, I also have a weird relationship with romance. I always like, whenever someone uses the word, I'm always like imagining like some corny candlelight dinner, and like,
Right.
I don't know, it's like some 80s sitcom version of it where I'm like, yeah, there's no like, I'm not gonna like put on Frank Sinatra and like, try and woo someone. It's like, that's just not in my vernacular.
Yeah. I think romance, it's one of those things that it because I grew up in the 80s too, and like, I feel like that gave me this twisted idea, because it's like, this is what romance is supposed to be, and then you get older and start having your own experiences and opinions, and it's like, that sucks. Like, that's, I don't know, but I think that's great. I love that story, and I know that experience of sharing music being like just such a bond building thing. Like, it's just such a So, well, what's a song that changed your perspective on an artist, either for better or for worse?
Okay, this one is definitely for the better. I feel this is the one I'm most uncomfortable talking about. But so I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but Claire Rousay, Wouldn't Have to Hurt.
Okay.
And so that was, I, up until that point, really recently, I used it on a mix I did recently. And up until that point, I really hadn't clicked with her work. I understood the appeal, but as I was saying, I wasn't finding the stuff that I had heard. There wasn't that friction or that tension that I liked. It was doing something else that I generally don't need out of music. And so it was like, I understand the popularity, but it wasn't clicking with me. And this track, with this spoken word that is so intimate and so vulnerable, I was like, just blew me away. Just absolutely blew me away. And I was like, this is the tension, this is the friction that I was looking for between the beauty of it and, something else. And so that really, I'm like, okay, now I it's inspired me to like go down the rabbit hole. I've been trying to listen to other stuff lately. So
yeah, there's a lot of it. I
yeah,
that's really interesting. Like obviously, like I am a great admirer of Claire, and but I also, not that I would say Claire and I are friends, we're acquaintances, I guess. I actually recorded an episode of this with her a couple weeks ago that hasn't come out yet. I think she would probably find all of this fascinating. Like she's one of those people who is just like, okay, yeah, cool. Because
nice.
it can be weird, like especially like in this sort of scene, whatever this scene is. I don't know, like it could be. I'm curious how, like, you heard that. Were you like, where did you just happen to hear that? Like, how did, especially if her work hadn't been clicking for you, how did you end up coming upon this piece or this album, like this piece specifically, I guess?
Yeah, so I was specifically looking through her work for something to play for my radio show, which is called Sounds Towards a Queer Ambitopia. Ambitopia is a term coined by a queer science fiction author about it's basically speculative science fiction. So it's about kind of imagining future worlds that aren't utopian, that carry that following the problems of our world to equally futuristic conclusions as well. And I try and feature mainly queer artists in it. I will queer other artists occasionally, but it's generally an opportunity for me to contextualize queer artists. And to be totally honest, it's like after a year of doing it, it's like it's a challenge to fill sometimes, and not be playing the same folks all the time. And so I was like, I haven't played her yet. It felt like a total, crime that I hadn't. Even though I hadn't connected with her work, that there's another level to the radio show about just building community, and I also just think I had a lot of artists on that one that weren't so well known. I was like, oh, this is also a nice juxtaposition of like, I joined Bluesky recently and put out a call on there of like, I need recommendations, and I actually like had the best response there of any I've had. So it was like a ton of folks that I met there that I just never heard of. And so that was just, I was like, I'm gonna throw in the heavy hitter along with it.
That's yeah. I mean, this is actually like one of my favorite pieces of hers, and I really like the album it's on too. But that's really it makes a lot of sense. Like it'll be interesting to see, like, as you like further explore or re-explore some of her work, if any of it lands differently, or all those things. But I think, and this is something that will come up in a later song, but I always think that's such an interesting thing of like, there are these artists. Well, I'm not gonna we'll get into it later, because I don't want to repeat myself, and that would be stupid. God, the spoken word part on that track is, like, it starts out and you're just like, okay, like when talking about anxiety and it's never going to get better, and then the story, oh my god, it is so intense. And it's really well sort of,
and relatable to me.
No, for sure. And I think that the piece does a really good job, like the music does a really good job of sort of framing it, like the way that it changes during the story. Like, I don't know, it sort of amplifies it to me, and it's just, it's a really good piece of music. Well, okay, what are your favorite lyrics? Do you pay attention to lyrics very much?
I do in certain contexts. So
Okay.
I'm huge on top of like all the electronic music that I love. Um, there's also I have a huge love of kind of folky music. So
Oh, okay.
um, yeah, and in that context, it's I'm
Right.
very focused on the lyrics.
Yeah, makes
And so
sense.
for this one, I did Devendra Banhart, "A Sight to Behold,"
Nice.
and it's a really short track. But to me, the lyrics are just kind of flawless. Um, and like, yeah, it just I'm blanking on the exact line that I love, but it just yeah. Now I have to look it up.
I have such a soft spot for like those first couple of records of his. I I kind of
Mhm.
forgot he existed for a long time, for better or worse, and
I had I had the exact same. For me, I would say the vibrato years and a couple records after, but as he transitioned out of using a ton of vibrato, um,
yeah,
I kind of I lost I lost a little bit of interest. And I've gone back and actually listened to all of it, and I still love it. But it was like, yeah, I took a break. But those first, I would say the first like five records for me, I was just, over the moon about and played them to death.
yeah. I remember. Yeah, same. I played. I mean, I remember when those first ones because it was I don't know, like it was 04 or something. 05 when he first and it was
Yeah.
there was like a moment there. I mean, because that was when Joanna Newsom first came, which it kills me that people I don't think they associate them anymore. But it's like, okay, come on, that's well, okay, we're not gonna. Oh, I'll talk about Joanna
Oh
Newsom
yeah.
later,
I
but
I totally
no.
yeah. I
But
think
yeah, I think
there was
I
an
don't know.
association there.
And I think it was just like, oh, it's these two people doing folk music and they quote unquote sing weird. Like I think
Yeah.
that was,
Yeah.
and I don't know, it was I don't remember, I don't remember what label he was on. I don't think he was on Drag City because so I didn't like because that happens too. If like, oh, they're on the same label, so they're gonna get into it, but I don't think they were. Um
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I forget about these records. That's the thing, is which is a shame because every time
Yeah.
I go back and revisit them, I'm like, God, there's some really great stuff here. And
Yeah.
yeah, I listened to his newest album while I was prepping for this, I guess that came out last year, and it's just like it's. I hope he's doing, good for him. Do whatever you want to do, but it's just not for me,
Yeah.
and that's totally fine. It's
Yeah.
for a lot more people.
Yeah.
I'm
Though
sure.
there is a video you should check out because there is a fun crossover. Dorian Wood was in a video
Oh,
for that for promoting that album. I have no
oh,
idea
well,
how
okay.
she and him connected, but yeah, and the video is spectacular. So yeah, um,
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna look
yeah,
that.
check that out.
That's cool. I love random connections like that. That's great.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, totally.
all right. What is the sexiest song?
So the sexiest song I chose, "The Knife." Pass this on. Um, it's a song that I really love. It has a fantastic video.
Yeah.
Um, that felt really edgy at the time. But specific, I mean, it's all about hitting on someone's brother. Um, but specifically, there's this line where she says, "Is he willing? Can he play?" Um, and at that moment, play was such a euphemism for hooking up in the queer scene. At that very moment, that it felt
Mm-hmm.
like it felt like a real like it felt both like slipping something past a certain part of
Right.
the world, but also a real acknowledgement at the same time. And it just like it felt so naughty and sexy, and
Yeah,
yeah. So that
that's
was
great.
that's mine.
I yeah this so this is gonna be well I have like a lot of things to say about the knife. I really love the knife, and I always feel. Did they break up recently or something? Did I dream that, or I don't know? Maybe I
I don't
dreamt that. I
know. I
hope I
haven't
dreamt
heard
that.
that. Yeah,
Okay, I
yeah.
made that up. Great. Um, yeah, my weird connection to the knife is that like around no, it must have been later. It was like 2009. I don't know. Do you know John Twells, who ran the Type label, did music as Zella? I don't know. I don't know if you
I
ever knew them.
never met him. Yeah,
Okay. Well, so
yeah.
John has like been one of my closest friends for a long time, and they back then when they were still living in the UK, the Knife asked them to open for them on a couple dates in the UK, which is super
Oh,
cool.
nice.
But
Yeah.
at the time, Peter Mannerfelt, who's a producer, makes all sorts of cool music, was part of their band, like their live band. And so like John and Peter became friends through that, like hit it off. And Peter was like, "Oh, you should hear this record that I made with my friend." And it was, and John was like, "Oh, this is great, but I can't put it out. I got too much stuff. But let me introduce you to my friend Brad." And so like that's how I ended up putting out the first Roll the Dice record, which I think is one of the best things Digitalis ever put out. And Peter and I are still friends because of that. So that's my weird connection to the knife.
Nice.
And I never told that
Right
story.
on.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to take the opportunity. But so I wanted to put that in first before I say the next part, because it would have been weird right after what you were talking about. This was the song that was playing as my kid got out of the car this morning. She's like, "Oh, this is cool."
Oh, nice.
I was like, yeah, we got to listen to the Knife. So I'm like, okay, the Knife and Billie Eilish. That's where we're going next.
Nice. I love it. That is yeah, that is a good one.
But yeah, I love this. I mean, I really like this song for a lot of reasons, but I think that's the lyrics for it always kind of crack me up, like in a good way. Like I just think it's so. I just love the first line. Something about like, I like your brother. What's his name or something? Like it's so like it's like, oh, it's perfect.
Yeah, it's such a there's a sass to the song, that is just
so
that
good.
is it's such a vibe I love.
Yeah, this is like a thing I'm picking up on, and something I relate to is that like attitude in songs is like a thing that gets you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love me some attitude. Yeah. Almost every other question that is, there's some relation to that. Yeah. So.
Right. I love it. Okay, well, what's the best hype song?
The best hype song I did, Sleater Kinney, The End of You.
Nice.
I love that era of Sleater Kinney. And it is just it's such a good hype song. Like, it is all about, the band as, familial unit, by way of ship metaphor. I mean, it just like, it just kills me. Like that song just is so good.
Yeah, so this is, I kind of alluded to this earlier. Like this is one of those bands. So like I've never been like super into Sleater Kinney, and it's weird because it's not in a like they're not good or I don't like it or they're not for me kind of way, because like early Kill Rockstar stuff was super formative for me, like Heavens to Betsy, which is Corin Tucker's, like that stuff, and was super important to me. And but I think this is the thing I think about all the time. We kind of talked about this before, is like the timing was wrong or something. Like I don't know. Like when Sleater Kinney came out, like I was in a different place what I was listening to, and then they're like one of those bands that it's like I should be into this. Like why is this not one of my things? And and I don't know. It's such a, I feel like I have a number of those bands where I like it passed me by and it annoys me that it did. which is silly because there's a million other things out there. But like, yeah, I don't know why. Like they're one of, and every time I hear like Sleater Kinney, if I play, it's like, God, this is great. Like I dig this, but then I never, like, if I want to like listen to something like that, I go to something else. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think it speaks to a phenomenon that I'm very, very well versed with. And I think, and it's something that is, I don't feel like is talked about a lot in music fandom, because in music fandom, there's always this like badge of honor for discovering things.
Yeah.
And so, and it's like, oh, I discovered this and I've liked them since, this point.
I was there before they got popular.
Yeah. And but there's not, there's culturally, there's not as much of a reward for being like, yeah, I missed the first 4 records, and it's like, so with Sleater Kinney, it was like, I didn't listen to their stuff until the record after the record with The End of You, which I can't remember the name now. But it was like the record after that was the first thing I heard, loved it, went back and liked their more recent early stuff, but like their first 2 records, I have no time for. Like it's a different vibe, and I just like, I'm like, yeah, it just doesn't, it never clicked with me. And it's like, so if I had heard those first 2 records, I probably never would have pursued them further and missed all this stuff. Right. And so I feel like, there's this idea of finding things it's not just like you have to find the right record at the right time.
Yeah, I absolutely, that is some, like, I think about that again. I think about all this crap too much, but like I think about that all the time because and I've talked about that on this show. Like Low has been one of those bands that everybody I know loves Low, and it felt like this thing that I would be into, but I could never get there. And then especially with bands that have longevity, it becomes so overwhelming because it's like, how do I even find a way into this massive discography? And because of this show, like I actually found a Low song, somebody had picked one, and it just fucking blew my mind. And I was like, okay, I have like a starting point. And
that's funny to bring up Low, because Low for me is similar. Like I like the first couple records, and I haven't paid attention in 20 years. Yeah, I'm like, oh, they went a direction I don't care about, and
and that's another thing. I have plans for this show that like eventually I'm going to have like the Songs of Our Life like remix, where I have a whole other set of questions, basically, so I can have people come back on, and so it'll be like different questions. And I always like, that's like, again, bands that are around for a long time and evolve their sound. Like there are some people who are around for a long time and their sound, stays mostly the same. Like they do the same, but like I think about Phil Niblock, who did the same thing for like 60 years and did it better than anybody else. Like, and I like, but then there are bands, like Sleater Kinney or Low, or all these, that it's like this, it changes. And I don't know, like how I need to think of a question around that kind of thing, because I think that's like a really fascinating, and then thinking of like like bands that have done that I love all of it. I'm like, I don't know if if there is, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I'm sure there is. So anyway, that was a whole tangent. Okay, we got the last 2 questions, the 2 big questions coming down the home stretch here. And next one is, what is the song that means the most to you? And it's not necessarily because of the song itself, but you associate it with something or experience or someone that's so important to you.
All right. So this is a vulnerable one for me. This is another Devendra Banhart song, Wake Up Little Sparrow. One of, I'm going to try and not choke up for this. One of my favorite things to do with my mother was to sing along to music. And so there was an element that I would introduce her to stuff, but early on, we were singing along to Michael Jackson together. Right. when I was young, and when I was a teenager and in my early 20s, I was turning her on to things. So Devendra Banhart was something I turned her on to. Magnetic Fields, she was like over the moon about 69 Love Songs.
Awesome.
We would get together, kind of hang out, and be listening to music, and then kind of like hit a song we loved and sing along. And so that is the last song I sang along with her.
Wow. That's wow. That's amazing. That's I mean, I can totally. I'm getting choked up. Like
it's a beautiful song. It's beautiful to sing along to, and yeah, it's a wonderful memory that I wish I had more like it. But yeah,
that is really beautiful, and I think that like this song is, to me, like for me, this is like the peak of Devendra Banhart's power. Like this is this is such a beautiful song, and if anybody like this, if people were like, well, I've never listened to or I don't like this later stuff, like I want to know what it is you hear. It's like this is the song I would send them to, probably, because it is so like beautiful, and there's like a tenderness to it, and this like it's a really good song. Well,
yeah,
what a memory. Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, Yann, we've made it to the last one. As of this moment in time, or at least when you filled this out, what's your favorite song?
Yeah. So this one I went jumped around a lot with, and it's a really weird choice. I think looking back, I'm like, I'm okay. I mean, I can articulate why I chose it, but it's Fuse UVA. And I have a weird anecdote about first hearing this record. I mean, again, I've mentioned I was a 90s raver. In Wisconsin, Plastic Man was, Richie Houghton was a massive thing. But there was even an interview in the late 90s where Richie Houghton named Madison as his favorite place to play. So there was a huge connection between him, his work, and in my formative years. This I heard a little after it came out, but it was the first time I heard it. It was a friend had taken everything out of their bedroom, set up a pop tent in their bedroom, and were basically hotboxing in this tent in their bedroom, listening to this record. And this track in particular has this arpeggiated kind of like sound in the background that is so weird. And there's one note in it that doesn't feel like it works, but it does. And it just like, there's this weird tension there that is just beautiful and uncomfortable. And they're like these kind of washy synths over the top that make it really emotional. Yeah. And so that one, that's
why. Those two things you just described, like the arpeggios and the like kind of emotive sort of washy floaty synths on top. It's like those are the two things that I'm a total sucker for when done well. And it's like the arpeggios on this song, especially. I could just listen to that on a loop for like hours and just be happy because it is so. Yeah, like you said, there's something about it that seems off, but it's not, and I don't know what it is. I don't have like, maybe if I knew anything about music theory or anything, I could explain it, but I can't. But yeah, I would have never guessed that this was the answer to this, but I love this song. I really love this piece of music. It's just, there's something about it that feels really even without any memories tied to it, because I have no like specific memories of this. I just think it's a really beautiful piece of music.
Yeah. Well, if you could do that for a really long time, another track on that is I don't know how you would pronounce it, but they CHX,
Okay.
all one word. But it was that was hugely influential on me because it was like probably one of the first tracks that I ever heard that was like 13 minutes long.
Oh man.
And it really it's like it's just this one kind of arpeggiated slow melody.
Sign me up.
And it kind of changed, like he moves it into different synth sounds. So at one point it's almost being made from a drum sound, and then it's layered with samples from THX 1138.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Which make it super weird. But check out that track because it is. Okay. That one's a killer too.
Awesome. I realized. So, which question was the Joanna Newsom song for?
Joanna Newsom song was what song have you or can you listen to the most? And I actually sorted my entire iTunes by plays. And it was like that song is like so far ahead of anything else in the entire.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I was like, yeah, that tracks. I was like, that song is, yeah.
I think you could make an argument that that's the greatest song of all time. It hasn't been around long enough yet. Give it another 10 years.
I feel like to me, it's close enough. Like that was an easy contender. There is when the second vocalist comes in, like 2/3 of the way in with that bassy
Bill
voice.
Callahan.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's just, and it's out of nowhere. I remember
every time. Yeah.
I know. It's like, oh shit, Bill Callahan just showed up. Oh Jesus. Okay. Oh man. I could talk about Joanna Newsom for a long time because I think Joanna Newsom's probably my favorite artist on the planet. And my dream in 2024 is that we get a new album. So I have no inside information. People seem to think I do, but because I write about music, but I have no anything. But
that would be a real treat.
Yeah, if anything's going to make 2024 slightly bearable, it would be a new Joanna
Newsom. I wholeheartedly agree with that one. Yeah.
Yeah. God, she's so good. Okay. I just had to know because she's come up more than anybody else doing this show. And I always think that's so interesting. And it's mostly different. I think two people picked Sawdust and Diamonds for something, but usually it's always a different song because you can like put all her songs on a dartboard and throw it, and I could talk about any of them. Anyway.
Yeah, totally. Same here.
Well, ending with Joanna Newsom is always a great place to end things. This was a lot of fun. Everybody needs to just check out Dragon's Eye and what's going on. Do you have any of your own stuff on the way this year or anything? I guess maybe you can't say anything, but
I'm not yet. I'm in the preliminary phase. Usually how I work is after I put out a album, I do a number of comp tracks or just one-offs, try and like kind of as a palate cleanser. And I now know the trajectory of the next release. I know it's going to be an EP. I have like I have this very clear idea of what it is and not a note recorded.
Yeah. Now the hard part is finding the time to do it. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, people can stay tuned, and then lots of cool stuff coming out on Dragon's Eye. And Yann, this was an absolute delight. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me. This was a blast.
Once again, thank you to Yann Novak, and please be sure to check out the Voices of Theseus on Room 40. It's, if you haven't heard the original The Voice of Theseus, check that out first, and then kind of prepare yourself for the Voices of Theseus, and you won't be disappointed, because both of them they're just tremendous. Like, as a whole sort of collection, the whole document, I don't know, the whole picture, it's remarkable. And give a look at Dragon's Eye Recordings, because he's put out some absolutely fantastic music in recent years. For a long time. The label's been around for a long time. I didn't even realize how long the label's been around. But yeah, check out his picks at the links in the show note. If you are enjoying listening to the show, you can find the full conversation on Patreon, patreon.com/Foxy Digitalis. Or hey, at least if you could leave a rating and or a review wherever you listen to these podcasts, that kind of thing helps a lot, and I would appreciate it tremendously. All right, that is it for me. Till next time, keep on listening to whatever the hell you want.